The verdict is in. How does the public grade the Senators' management? After a very tricky offseason, a new article is not giving the Senators the credit they deserve. Hello everyone, I am Eoghan Drumm, and welcome to Senators Digest, where we talk all things Ottawa Senators. Today we'll be getting into a new article released by The Athletic as they graded all the team's management from this offseason, and the Senators did not get a very good review. We'll get into that very shortly, but before we do, don't forget to go down and hit that subscribe button. We notice around 90% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel, and it is 100% free. So if you are an Ottawa Senators fan, or even just a fan of the league and want to stay in touch with news, rumors, reports regarding the Ottawa Senators, this is the place for you. So please go down and hit that subscribe button. Okay, so we all know the Ottawa Senators management have had a very interesting offseason, having to deal with a lot of different situations. And The Athletic have released this article where they are grading the management of every single NHL team from 1 to 32, obviously giving letter grades from A, B, C, D, or even F. And the Senators, where do they rank? They rank just below the halfway point of the league's teams, 17th. They rank them 17th with an overall grade of a B+, with a 3.4 rating out of 5. And it is kind of split up into two different categories: how the public sees the team and how the fan base sees the team. And if we look from both sides, the public rankings, most of them are a lot higher. If we look at cap management, it's higher. Draft and develop, it's significantly higher on the public side. Roster building, it's higher. Trading is the same. Free agency is the exact same. Vision, slightly higher. The total public have a better overview of the Senators management, I guess, than the actual fan base, which I find very interesting because from an outsider looking at what the Senators have done this offseason, you look at it and say they really haven't done anything. They trade Tkachuk away, and they've gotten a few players back, but overall they haven't done a whole lot. Where I feel like the fan base would understand more of the circumstances that this management had to go through. The Brady Tkachuk trade was completely on the fly. They had to make this decision up pretty much right away because they were informed by Tkachuk that he wanted to be out, and these are the teams that I'm allowing you to negotiate with and get a deal going now. So I find this really interesting. And if we even look at the bottom, the change of confidence from last year, it's actually, the fan base has gotten more confident. It's 46% more confident than last year and 28% less. So the fan base, by looking at that, it's showing that they have more confidence, but it's not showing in the grades. I find that a very interesting kind of difference there, where in the public it's 27 more confidence and 26% less confidence. So let's digest all of this. Let's kind of look at how the Senators offseason has gone from who they've acquired, who has left the team, how is their team structured, the cap situation, the draftees that they got, all of that. And I'm going to give my reaction on all this because I'm not going to lie, I think this is a little low for the Senators, but we'll get into what I think in a little bit. So let's just start by taking a look at the additions the Sens made this offseason. So they acquired William Eklund from the Sharks. That was used with a pick that was acquired from the Brady Tkachuk trade. Andrei Burakovsky, they acquired in a trade with Chicago. Didn't have to give up much. It was just a 6th round selection. Urson, they acquired from the Leafs after the Leafs acquired him from Philly. And they also re-signed Giroux, which I think was a big positive in bringing him back for another year. Not a big contract. I think it's actually around the same as last year, which is great because I think he lived up to that contract perfectly fine. So that is who they added this offseason. In terms of departures, there's the big name there, Brady Tkachuk. Their captain, their biggest departure, obviously. But obviously, the Sens had no real control in the situation. Brady wanted out. He told them, I have no intentions on re-signing. And he basically told them, trade me to Florida. And that's the only place I want to go. So they kind of got pinned up against the wall at that one. in the end, they made it work. They got Eklund, and they got some picks in return as well. The 9th pick, which they got Eklund for, obviously, and the 25th overall pick, which allowed them to pick a little higher in the draft. Then they had the 32nd as well, and then they were able to get that 25th pick. So they ended up having 2 first-round picks compared to none by the beginning of the season. We have to remember that. They had no first-round picks going into the beginning of last season, and then they ended up having 2. So that has to be a win for sure. And then Nick Jensen as well as Lars Eller. So Lars Eller, 4th-line center, he decided to sign with a different team. I can't think of which team it was. And Nick Jensen, they didn't re-sign. He had a really tough injury season last year, and I wasn't surprised that they didn't re-sign him. He had a good first year with the team, but I just feel like they have other options that can do the job just as well that Jensen does. So when you're looking at that, I would say yes, they lost a big player in Tkachuk, but in the players that they were able to get back in Eklund, Burakovsky, I'm not a huge fan of Burakovsky, but still in addition, they didn't have to give up much for him. And Urson giving another player an opportunity to fill in that backup role, which has been a big struggle for quite a while now. I think those are key pieces that you had to address. And I think from that perspective, it is a win. Because, again, Brady Tkachuk wasn't providing anything by the end of the year anyway. In the playoffs, he was useless. So this is kind of just you gotta if things aren't working, you gotta change something. That's what winning teams do. We see Vegas all the time. They're always making changes to their roster, and they're always still in contention. If something's not working, you got to make a change. And Brady is gone, and this is a little bit of a change. It shakes up the room a little bit, gets the guys realizing that if you don't perform, you could be out the door. So this could be a transition point for the Senators' top core, and we'll see if if they respond to this and if they're able to play better than what they did the past 2 years. So how's the roster really constructed as of now? So this is what it looks like. It's fairly similar to last year. Obviously, that first line spot, Eklund, is now there. But other than that, with Burakovsky's on the right wing, everything else is pretty similar. The defense is fairly similar to what we were seeing at the end of the year. Obviously, Yakimchuk is in that last spot, but Matt and Paolo very well could end up in that spot as well. And then Urson, that backup role in goalie. So the lineup is fairly similar, but it did work last year. Like, in the way that Travis Green wanted to play, very hard to play against, forechecking first. This team did very well at that. So if they're able to stick with that system, they should be able to compete with all the top teams. It's just that scoring. That's the one area they really haven't addressed, is that top scoring winger. And maybe they're still looking, who knows? But I think they still need to add that to really compete for the division, and if they want to make a long run in the playoffs in the near future. And then the cap situation, I think they've done a very good job with the cap. I believe in the gradings they've given a B for cap management, which, is good. But I think with the contracts they have, Stützle's only $8 million, Sanderson's only $8 million, Cozens is only in the $7 million, I believe. These are top-end players that you're not really paying that much on. Yes, it will come back once they off to be re-signed. We're seeing it with Batherson and how he wants a fairly large pay upgrade. So it will come back, and they're going to have to start paying guys once their contracts expire. But I think in this current situation, their cap is in a perfect situation. They have their full roster filled out, and they still have $4 million in cap space to work with, which you always want that extra wiggle room, and the Senators have that. So I'd personally give that grade a little higher. Maybe an A- I would give for cap management, whereas the article has them at a B. And then the last thing we'll look at is just the draft picks very quickly. Focusing on the 2 first-round picks, Jonas Lagerberg-Hohen and Jackson Cover. I talked about those 2 players in a past video, and I think, again, they had no first-round picks going into the draft or going into the season last year, and they ended up with 2. So I think that in itself is a win. And I think Cover and Jackson and Lagerberg-Hohen, I think they have potential to be impactful players for the Senators in the future. So overall, I think for what Steve Staios and management had to deal with, they did perfectly fine. And we got to remember, this team was able to compete with, they won a lot of games down the stretch. They were one of the toughest teams to play against last year. And it just seems like that got forgotten in the sweep against the Hurricanes. The Flyers also got swept. The Canadiens lost in 5. They basically got swept. They won game 1 and didn't win a game. They couldn't get shots, the Canadiens. So I feel like we're just over this narrative that the Senators are on a downtrend and that, their core is over. It's gotten, I don't know. They're in a fine position. I wouldn't say they're in the greatest position, obviously, because they lost Brady Tkachuk. But I still think they're in a perfect position to make a run for the playoffs. And if they're able to play consistent hockey from October all the way to April with consistent goaltending and consistent scoring, they can be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. So overall, I think the Athletic kind of gave the Senators a low score for this offseason. Yes, they didn't make any crazy big moves, but I just didn't think they had to. They're still looking for that top defense or that top winger to score. But all things considered, I am very happy with where the Senators team is at, and I personally would give this team an A- grade total compared to a B- to what the Athletic gave. Maybe I'm overreacting on the Senators, but I still think they're a top-end team that can compete with anyone in the Eastern Conference. What do you guys think about what the Athletic had to say about the Senators? Do you agree with their B- grade? Do you think it should be higher, or do you think it should be lower even, or do you think it is properly rated? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know if you have any video suggestions for me to do in the next few weeks of the off season. And also another reminder to please go down and hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel out a bunch, and it allows you to stay updated with Senators Digest content. That is all I have for you today. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.